No, sorry, this one is going to be in French. So Daniel Arsenault from JD Irving will present to us the use of LiDAR in the forest industry in New-Brunswick. Daniel has been with JD Irving now for a number of years in their precision forestry sector. He is a graduate from the University of Moncton, and he graduated in 2001, and he's been working for more than 5 years now as programmer and GIS programmer for the forest industry. And in the last 5 years, he has worked with LiDAR data. He is enthusiastic, I think, about the use of the LiDAR technology in operational forestry contexts in order to improve productivity and planning for various operations. So, Daniel? Your presentation is not yet on screen. Let me find it.
Je voudrais remercier.
I would like to thank the people who invited me to present and share with you what we're doing in the Maritimes with LiDAR data. You can see pretty well that there's a big craze in your beautiful province of Quebec for LiDAR technology and using LiDAR data. For us at JD Irving, as an industry, the typical phrase we say is that for us it was a game changer. It really changed. It was a deal changer. It changed almost all the planning steps we had in forestry operations. I would say since 2011, we really integrated LiDAR data in almost all our processes in the company. So that mainly what I'm going to do here is I'll try to show you all the facets of the business where we use LiDAR. We use LiDAR at several levels. Strategically, what do we do with LiDAR data? Annually, what do we do? And in terms of cutting quadrants, what benefits did LiDAR bring us for our operations? For those who don't know, JD Irving, we're a company that is very integrated. We're present in the U.S., in the state of Maine. We're one of the largest owners of forest lands in Maine and owners of partners. And in New Brunswick, we're also very much present in Nova Scotia. And globally, that represents close to 2.5 million hectares under management. Half of those are private woodlots or private lands that belong to the company, but the rest is either crown lands, provincial lands that for which we manage the forest. It's slightly different than the situation in Quebec, but I think we have pretty much the same principles here, I believe. And we have close to 1 billion trees that we've planted since 1957. So we did a lot of intensive silviculture. We've been doing that for decades. Our history with the LiDAR data at JD Irving, I was a forest planner, as some of you are probably in the room. I took care of supply, cutting operations plan. In 2011, they gave me a little plot with LiDAR, and they tell me, okay, Daniel, let's see what we can do with that. That's how the adventure started for us at Irving. And we quickly realized that there was a lot of benefits to be derived for our business with that. So in 2011, we had a plot of private woodlot, a plot of private land, not too far from St. Leonard, Edmundston, in northern New Brunswick. We did half the data acquisition on that land, about 100,000 hectares, and we went into a partnership with the province of New Brunswick, the Canadian Forest Service, and some LiDAR data suppliers in the Maritimes. And we really entered into a partnership. We tried to figure out what is the question we would like to answer with LiDAR data, if we could answer those questions. So 1 year went by, 2 years went by. We learned to use the device in our operations in various ways, basic products, or to start the forest inventories. We started with inventories. And 2013-14, that's where everything really started for us, because we embarked on the Canada-wide AWARE project. A large part of you are probably aware of that project. Big partnership with a lot of universities and private industry, and with big questions that we try to answer. That includes identification of species. Species identification, that's a question that I work with Mr. Saint-Onge. Lots of researchers are working in that species identification issue. J.D. Irving has played a role in that. We had some questions, and we're part of that, the answer to that big question mark. In 2015, the province of New-Brunswick, with its Department of Forests, they really saw a benefit, as you can realize now in Quebec, to do a wall-to-wall data acquisition for the whole province. So they started that 1 or 2 years ago, and it's a bit similar to what was presented this morning. In New Brunswick, we're already at our second or third year of that kind of thing. And I would tell you that this year, it's a bit like a cornerstone for us at Irving, where we really integrated that everywhere into our processes. So it replaced totally our business base. All our forest inventories have changed now. We have now a new version of the inventory, which we didn't have before. Following that, we saw the benefits we had with that. The company made a commitment to have LiDAR for all our forest lands. For us, it represented approximately 2.5 million hectares. So it's it's huge. Those are huge investments. But J.D. Irving saw the benefit of doing that and the returns, return on capital that we could have with LiDAR. We didn't wait for it to be done. We really did it by ourselves with partnerships, and the province got involved also with us. In Maine, it was the same. In the state of Maine, we regrouped with partners there too, and we have the same number of programs happening also in the state of Maine. So we started at the beginning. We have different kinds of data. We spoke a little bit about parameters this morning. We have 6 points per hectare, 1 point per hectare, or 1 point per square meter, rather. Certain regions, we had only the forest inventory. In certain areas, we only had primary basic products, such as shaded reliefs and all that comes with that. And we really wanted to have a diversity. Some areas where we had 6 points per square meter, we wanted to make sure we didn't want to dilute the precision and miss anything. So there are certain theories that the more points we have, the best likelihood we have to identify our species and do the individual quantification of stems. So we have 6 points per square meter. We have 1 point per square meter. We experiment, we make tests with those things, but as a general rule, even 1 point per hectare, or per square meter rather, with the leaves, when we do the acquisition, we can have the same precision in terms of volumetric data. Even we don't need 6 points per square meter, but to identify species, we'll know where is the threshold. So that shows you a footprint of what of the LiDAR data that we have. 3 big components in which we use these data in the company. There's the strategic component, which is involved about very high-level questions that we can ask ourselves in terms of development plans, acquisition of forest machinery, annual cut allowances. Those are all questions that we're asking ourselves, and we use LiDAR to a certain extent to answer those questions. In terms annually, it's more like the planning aspect. Annual planning is seasonal planning. Season per season. There are certain ways for us to use the LiDAR to help us with that, and we really have the operational side, which is on specific cutting areas where we use the LiDAR in a different way to answer certain questions. So for the strategic component, when I say strategic, I'm talking about the inventory, mainly resource analysis and questions we might ask ourselves about timber supply and forest management plans. First strategic application that we have is the following. In the past, we referred to as a permanent sample plots to measure our growth curves for our strata. Today, each 20 meter, we have the volume for each quadrat of 20 meters by 20 meters. And we saw this. It's just as if we had permanent plots every 20 meters on the ground today. That's practically what we have. So we no longer have strata. We really have explicit volumes for each of our forest units. We have quite a precise estimation. Instead of having strata averages, we have it for each little plot of land. That gives us a snapshot of our standing volume in real time without having to use big modeling systems and how much timber do I have, how much biomass do I have in certain areas, so we project over time. But now, really, we have the standing volume really at the tip of our fingers right away on the ground. The other thing we were able to do is that we were able to validate on the ground each strata. So there we had hundreds of strata. We could look everywhere on the ground. All the strata of that type, how do they compare with the growth curves we had? So we can project, we could see whether we were above or below our data. The other way we use it strategically is to evaluate the diet of our forest resources. We know how much wood we have now, the biomass, the wood biomass, and the second question we asked is what type of wood do we have and what type of equipment do we need to harvest our wood in the most efficient possible way. So today we know that just as geomatics and planning advances and forest machinery is evolving each year, we have better machines, more effective machines, more specialized. They can perform better with certain types of wood, for example. So today we can ask ourselves the question at a strategic level: do we really have the right type of equipment to log the type of wood we have? So we can already start answering those questions, and we can look at the whole territory and say, all right, say we have so many felling machines, maybe we should go with short timber machines. We even go to the level of the specific heads, the specific cutting heads to a centimeter. We know we have so many cubic meters of wood that will come, and we need that kind of hedge, and we can map that to a specific scale and with a specific type of feller buncher. And here we see an example of size of wood, the DHP. That's the example of a manufacturer that proposes 5 types of cutting heads for our feller bunchers. In the blue area, they would be more productive with that type of head. So in order to remain competitive with the industry, we try to be as productive as possible in any kind of wood, with any kind of timber. So the mandate we have is to always put the right machine in the right place to be as productive as possible. If we map this on a map, it can look like this. The example we have here, I separated 6 sizes of wood, 6 timber sizes. It's in cubic meter per stem. There's not too much different in the classes we have there. It could be just 2 or 3 centimeters difference in the DHP makes a whole difference about volume and the productivity of machines. So if we can take in our annual cutting plan, we can analyze that. We look with our LiDAR data. We can say, okay, we have the right fleet of equipment for the type of resource we have annually or for the next 5 years. If we foresee that we're going to have part of the timber that will be a lot smaller in the next 5 years in our diet, we'll have to equip ourselves accordingly to be more productive and as competitive as possible at the same time. Another strategic use of the LiDAR data is as follows. J.D. Irving invests a lot in their mills, and we always try to have access to as many resources as possible. So if we have wood on the sides, we want to get to that wood in the strips. It will cost us a lot, but it's available. We can look at that part in several angles. The way I illustrated it here, I showed all the slopes from 30 to 45%. We want to get that wood in the slopes. You need a machine that's adapted to those steep slopes. Maybe something that can find its own level by itself, special traction to go into steeper slopes. how much wood do I have of that type on my territory? We can now answer that question. If I push a bit further, we have machines with cable systems attached under the machines. They can go a bit further. They can go close to 60% slope to harvest wood. It's costly, yes, but how much of that kind of wood do we have? We can start answering all those questions and start making a decision-making chart or a business plan and build a case around that. That's one of the strategic applications we make with slope data. Same thing with other types of data. Other analyses we make strategically, we look a lot at the supply in short and medium term for our timber diet. So we can, with our data, come up with what is a sawing ratio compared to the basic ratio. In New-Brunswick, we are very susceptible to market changes. Pulp markets are really volatile, and we're very sensitive to those fluctuations. The more information we can have about the merchandising of our stems and products, the better it is for us to guide us so as to optimize our operations plan. So we can start to derive values in terms of sawing values and the size of our logs. Also, we have mills that take only studs. Other have diets for a wood of 6 inches or more. What kind of diet will my operations provide me with this year? So we can, with an acceptable precision, we can predict what will be our wood diet and how much stud wood, how much stud lumber we are going to have, and so on. It's hard to put a figure on that, what it's worth, but it's certain things we see strategically. We have grids and we have gains. We're sure we have gains. Another thing, which is really, I think, spectacular, it's the example of a white spruce plantation dating back to 1980. That plantation, that stand was 36 years old today. All of that used to be one stand in our former GIS we had before. It was on one plantation straight ahead, 36 years old. I should push so much wood per year. From that, it was consistent. It was the same. Just our site classification, besides that, could change things slightly. But if I know the age of the plantation today, it's 36 years. And I can take the volume, I can take the height, I can go back in time and really map the productivity of my land. That's what this looks like. If my plantation, in that case, it had 160 cubic meter per hectare, and I know it's 36 years old, so I pushed 4 cubic meters per hectare per year. That's what grew out of that plantation, 4 cubic meters per hectare. So we can see the productivity of a plantation in a place where we have invested. So the bottom part, you can see here, is growing at the rate of, we have good land in New Brunswick. Let me tell you, those are real figures. I know it doesn't grow the same way here in Quebec, but there are places where we go up to 12 cubic meters per hectare. But the bottom part for us, for our investment, it's much less significant. Maybe I should not have put any white spruce in that bottom part. Today I put white spruce everywhere, but will I really have a return on my investment in that bottom part? You know, the bottom part, I will probably not be able to do any commercial clear cut. So we can already ask ourselves questions about the productivity of the sites, which we couldn't really have before. So it's really powerful. I could maybe not be able to do any commercial thinning at the bottom part. And in terms of multi-year, we do a lot of analyses to revise the structure of our road network. In New Brunswick, we have roads pretty much everywhere. I mean, we're even rebuilding our old roads. We made them so long ago. So we always ask ourselves the question, should we redo our whole road network and start from scratch? We could look at this at a larger scale. And it's pretty easy for us to do our analyses, to ask us our questions, is it really worth it? For planning, now if I go down a little bit in the annual planning, there we are more at the annual mapping level and operating plan. If I look at the cycle of a forest development plan, to give you an example, is when we did our operations planning, we decided where we wanted to log this year, If we give several years to our operations plan, it starts to be very complex. That's in several regards. Our managers are asking us, have we optimized our operations plan? Were you in the right place at the right time? Did we optimize our transportation? Did we do the best processing we could? Are we investing our money in the right place? It's really a lot of constraints that we have to take into account. I put the image of a brain here, but the human brain can't answer all those questions. The planner does things to the best of his knowledge, but when you improve his knowledge with good data, these operations plan can be optimized and pushed to another level. Today, we can answer questions like, what is the anticipated cost of wood? I can answer those questions easily today. 5 years ago, it was another matter totally. Are we making the investments in the best areas? We do a lot of thinning at JD Irving, commercial thinning. Are we really doing that commercial thinning in the best possible places? Do we have the amount of sawwood and logs that we anticipated? What equipment do we need for harvesting? I spoke a bit about that earlier. Another thing we do annually is we have a partnership with the University of New-Brunswick. The Forest Watershed Group, they do world-class work. Everything that's wetland mapping, for example, they really have models that are state-of-the-art, which you should check what they're doing because they do it very well at the Forest Watershed Research Center. So what comes out of that is that we can, at the level of a quadrat, the average cutting quadrat are about 15 hectares. It might not be the same quadrat surface area. When I talk about a quadrat, it's 15 to 20 hectares for one operational unit. And today, we can give a season to our operational units. When we look at our annual plan, we can say, whoops, we have too much winter wood, too much winter timber in our plants. We should rebalance. We go back to the drawing board. We had ideas before, but things were all done manually. But today, we can automate much more things that used to be manual in our operations plans. The other thing we want to do, we want to minimize the impact on our soils. Another question we're asking ourselves annually, and that we can now answer, is the whole issue of merchandising, marketing. Depending on the type of forest we have and depending on the types equipment we have, there's several ways to cut our wood. We could do 8 foot, 10 foot, 12 foot. We can do chips. We can do logs. Or we can just get the softwood and go back to get some hardwood later on. Those are all kinds of decisions that we can make to be as competitive as possible and putting the right machine in the right place. We can see now what is the best product that will offer us the best, how to market our quadrat. We can answer those questions now. And what combination of treatment and processing will give me the best benefit possible? And we have our criteria. We have a recipe for our operations. They're integrated operations. And our test is based on the size of the wood and the ratio between softwood and hardwood. Wherever we are within, depending on where we are in the quadrat, we might decide to market the wood in a different way. But we can't do that now on a large scale. For planning, we want to optimize our operations plan. That is something we started to do about 3 years ago. I'll explain to you a bit more what it's all about. Since we have inventory data now, within each plot, for us it's 20 meters by 20 meters. We have dendrometric data. We have the size of the wood at the DHP. We have the volume per hectare. We have the green crown, the height, basal area. We have basal area by class of 2 centimeters. We have the diameter distribution. We have the density of all merchantable stems and non-merchantable stems. We have a whole panoply of information. Some of that information is more precise than others, but at a high level, we have tools that are really good, and we combine this with things we already know. Most of our forests already had a photo interpretation in the past. We knew a couple of things with a good confidence interval. What species were present, what development stage. So we combine things we know with some metrics, and we can now answer questions we couldn't even ask ourselves before. And the way the inventory is stored is available to the tip of the fingers of everyone. It's just one layer of information. All the data are there. You just have to go and look at it for every 20 meters. It's pretty easy to conduct little statistics about specific areas that you're interested in. I just want to show you here an example of what I call an optimized operation plan. I'll give you the example, the case of the first commercial thinning, where it starts. When we do our modeling and when we look at our annual cutting capacity, we estimate there is so many cubic meters that will come from our thinning. We want to make those treatments that are kind of expensive in the best place that will benefit the most. So we know our allowable cut. The way it was before, we had to do very specific requests from that age to that age. This species in particular, I might have 3,000 hectares that are available for that treatment, given my allowable cut. I want to do 1,000 only. Where should I cut that 1,000? Previously, we had to look at all the 3,000 hectares and say, okay, could be there. I'm not too sure because under that cover, I don't see the heights. That's more dense. So it was a bit of guesswork. It was done rather quickly. Now we combine LiDAR with things we know, and we can bring some logic to the process and give weight to some values. Certain species are more important than others.
Certain volumes, certain sizes of wood. We can look at it and say, okay, this area, they should get such a treatment instead of such another area. We shouldn't spend money in this area to do a thinning. And if we look at the quadrant, everything that's an X, for one reason or another, I don't want to do a treatment there. So it's easy to take those areas and exclude them. If we look at the block, this is the best information we had before. And now, if we take this terrain model, we can say there's a potential chance here. We can classify our slopes. We can see the limitations the machines might encounter. We can see parcels. From height, looking from the height, you can see different measures. You can see retention areas. So these are things that all can be done before we go into the field. We can predict the extraction of the trails. The slopes, we see the benefits. We put that in our machines, and it tells them the areas we want to avoid. I'm going fast here, but this is where we can see places where there is water only during certain periods of the year, where there are animals. When I was talking about New-Brunswick University, they do a fabulous work about wetlands, on wetlands. So there are certain places that are wetlands during certain times of the year, and we don't want to go there during those times. So within our grids, we can put the right machine in the right place and process things adequately. The roads, the forestry roads, I'm not going to talk lengthily about it, but we spoke a little bit about it this morning. This is an example of the distribution within a quadrant. What size of stems we have. 2 or 3 slides left now. So what we did is we took each 20 by 20 meter element. We took the information that we had about the species. We took the growth curve that was linked to that, and we were able to calculate potential return. I can't explain it in 2 minutes, but we were able to take our inventory and attach other information to it and create a growth curve with each of our little pixels. And per species, we were able to have an inventory per pixel. So issues that we encounter, of course, classification, ETC classification. We have the project Where. We're working with that. We're very interested in that. We want to experiment with the different methods, different captors, different sensors. We want to experiment with that. And we'd like to grow. We'd like to see what it's going to be like in 10 years, our growth curves. And then we have this parasite. So the budworm, how is that going to evolve? So pre-commercial thinning, you can see very quickly where you don't want to spend money. So these are our partners, the partners that we have in the Maritimes and in Canada that have contributed to help Irving advance in its projects. Thank you very much, New-Brunswick, Leading Edge. This is one of our suppliers that we have in the Maritimes, and a Canadian Forest Service. So that was a lot in very little time, but there you have it.